Hello and welcome back. Third episode of Direct Response Design Podcast. Here is Davide, as always, and today I'm so happy because I decided to talk about fonts, which don't sound so sexy compared to how to make more money with design, but trust me, knowing how fonts work will be absolutely important to understand also how to make your copywriting more readable, which means more client, which means more sales. But yeah, I have to admit it. Feel free to leave this podcast because I'm going through also a historical parenthesis. But I promise I will try to keep this the most fun as possible, the lightest as possible, also because it's really interesting from my point of view. But okay, that's it. No, it's not going to be a super business episode, but who cares? There will be more episodes for that, and let's dive into it because look, I know that sometimes choosing the right font for the marketing piece you have to create, you have to design, can be kind of hard because there are thousands and poof, lots of fonts on the internet. But first things first, of course, we have to be good and try to choose fonts with license, with commercial license, the most as possible, okay? Because fonts are considered softwares, and especially if your company is growing, you are endangered by those a bit envious that might try to point it out the fact that you're using a software you didn't buy, for example. I mean, it doesn't happen that often. It's kind of rare. At least in Italy, I never saw something like that happening, but who knows about the rest of the world? And since the internet provides us some solutions that we can use to not get in trouble and that are also very good looking and super readable, why to not use them? And in this podcast, I want to tell you how I choose the fonts and where I find good fonts for free that are also compatible with the vast majority of the site builders softwares. So, first step first, as said, choosing a commercial licensed font. Second important step is choosing a font with many weights, with regular bold italic, black italic, and so on. Why this? Because it's absolutely important to have many weights to make your text, your copy alive. Because if I show you a piece of copy just written in regular, it's boring, it's hard to read, it's not appealing. Instead, if on the same page we have italics, bold italics, blacks, etc., so many weights, I can assure you that piece of copy will see much more inviting, much more alive. This is what we want. As David Ogilvy taught us, we cannot bore people into buying our products. And let's be clear, no one on this world wants to deal with advertising. As soon as you recognize that something is a piece of marketing, you already will discard it very, very quickly. It's normal. This is why it's so important to build Trojan horses, but I will talk about this in one of the next episodes. Let's go back to fonts. So we said commercial use, many weights, then we need a serif font for body copy, especially on paper, and then we need a sans-serif font for headlines and sub-headlines. Why should we choose two different fonts? The reason is simple, because we need a bit of contrast between body copy and headlines and sub-headlines. We need it so, since picture it like this. The headline is the main entrance of the castle that we are building. This castle has many rooms with precious informations for our client that will lead him to choose us, or just to not get screwed or scammed by someone else that it's not working as good as us. And in these castles there are rooms, and the sub-headlines are the doors of those single rooms. Why? Because most probably, and this always happens, not only in advertising, people don't usually start to read something from start to finish, but they skim through the magazine, through the book, at least at first, to check if there are informations, valuable informations for them, right? So what we are trying to do here is to make this process easier. We are providing for them some labels on these doors, so they will get how important it is to read our sales letter, our magalog, our book. Because I'm sure there are informations that are very precious for them, right? And this high contrast between headlines, sub-headlines, and body copy allows us also to not use as much space, because when there is contrast, there is less need to make it big, because a sans-serif font pops out very easily on a sans-serif written page. You see the point? Also, it's good for brand identity in general to have at least a bunch of fonts, a couple of fonts. It really works to make our personality much stronger, much more defined, instead than with only one font. But you can try it. Okay, write a headline and then write some body copy, and try to make it, to design it, to edit it with only one font, okay, and with two different ones, and you will see the difference. You will see how much easier it is to read the sub-headline or the headline, because it's in a different font. And check also, this is about dimension. Try to get the same level of contrast that you have with two different fonts with only one serif font. You will notice that to have for having the same level of contrast, you have to enlarge the dimension of the font a lot more, which means more space used on the page, which is really important, because as we said in the first episode, we are writing a lot there. We need to write the promise, the proofs elements, the testimonials, the call to action, guarantees, etc., etc., etc. They take space, and we have to be smart using space, especially when it comes to postcards, flyers, or even megalogs, because, for example, there are rules for printing. We have to print a megalog with pages which are multiply of the number 4 because of a physical reason when it comes to printing. So it's important to manage wisely that space. These are, of course, extra tricks, but you can see that it's like creating an ocean, creating a sea. We need many drops, and we have to be careful about which drops are we putting into the sea to have a final result that matters, that brings us results. So we said choosing a free font for commercial use, choosing a font with many weights, choosing at least 2 different fonts. And let's say this is the 80% of the work already done. We have, of course, to choose a font that is legible and readable, but this usually if a font has many weights, it's already like that. It's very rare to find a professional font which is not readable or legible. But where to find these kind of fonts? Easily, also with the filter options. There is a free way, and there is a subscription way, and there is the payment way. Okay, I'd suggest you to avoid those free fonts portal like 1001 font, da font. Those fonts can be useful for some theming stuff, but they are not really useful for a brand identity or for a direct marketing piece of copy, because most of them they have only one font weight. They are not designed by professional, not always, at least not the free ones at least. So you can skip those websites very easily. But you can find something very interesting on Google Fonts, for example. Those fonts are very good. They are completely for free, and they are compatible with the vast majority of site builders. And on Google Font, you can also use filters. For example, if you want at least 4 or 6 weights of the font, you can put this as a filter. You can also choose between decorative fonts, geometric fonts, serif fonts, sans-serif, hand scripts, etc., etc., etc. So Google Font will be your first best friend when it comes to choosing fonts. The second one is Adobe Font. I mentioned this because there are a lot of good fonts. First, it's kind of quite compatible with the majority of the site builders, and since the most of the designers have an Adobe subscriptions, and Adobe Font is free, is included in these subscriptions, then why to not use it? Then the last, for those who are planning to have a very big company with a very clear brand identity, and they want an original font, a font that just a few people have, which is very recognizable, maybe I'd suggest to buy one, but they can cost a lot. They can also cost 50, 70, $100 per weight. Okay, we are in the field of very big companies choosing this kind of options. So most probably, since I'm probably speaking to small or middle-sized companies, there's no need for that. Okay, it's much more important that you start using the same font, the correct one, again and again and again, to make sure that your direct marketing pieces are working properly, legibility speaking. And Google Font for this, it's already very good. Playfair Display, Crimson Test, EB Garamond. Should be some variant of Cormorant. Just talking about the serif types, and you already have a lot of choice for different moods of just the serif type. But how to decide the mood? This is another complicated topic, another deep topic. So I will talk more deeply about this in another episode. But I want you to understand that you have to be very aware of the vibe, the mood that you are trying to convey with your brand. And that this mood comes from tradition, comes from the usage that we did with a specific font. Let me explain that to you with an example. Do you remember the medieval fonts, those fonts that are usually called Gothic fonts with very thick lines and really defined corners that are usually, you can see them most probably in some heavy metal bands logos. Okay, those fonts, we call them medieval fonts, but they were not designed as medieval fonts. It's not that in the Middle Age in Europe someone said, oh, I want to create a font, an aesthetic font that will be remembered as a medieval fonts, because of course we are in the Middle Age right now. Something, it's impossible. I mean, you already can hear the nonsense of this. What happened actually is that monks, amanuensis monks, I don't know if they are called like this, but they were those monks that used to spend the days copying the books by hand with calligraphy. Okay, there was not printing at the time in the Middle Age. It was not invented yet, so they had to copy the books by hand. A huge work. And also there were no industrial processes for printing the books or just to create and craft the pages and the books themselves. It was all work from crafters by hand with also long procedures which made the books very expensive. Every single page added to those books were a lot of money. It's not like nowadays that paper is very easy to produce, books are very easy to create, and with a bunch of clicks you just tell to a computer connected to a machine, hey, print me 300 pages books. It was not like that. It was like every single page had to be crafted by hand by someone dealing with dangerous chemicals and dangerous procedures, etc., which led the monks that wanted to copy the Bible, for example, to create a font which was very condensed, very narrow, which allowed them to fit much more words in the same page compared to previous fonts that were designed just for short communications, just for small pieces of text, like onts, for example, which is really big and round. But of course, it was not suitable anymore for these kind of works where the main focus was to fit the biggest number of words in the same page. This is how those Gothica Textura fonts were born. They were not born because of the aesthetic necessity of a designer monk to create cool medieval fonts. No, there was a specific economic reason. You see, it's our perception of a font, as it happens for colors, it's much more related to necessities than to aesthetic. We consider, for example, sans-serif fonts modern nowadays because we saw them much more often in a modern society. Also, maybe because of the computers, because we had at the beginning computers with big pixels that were not able to reproduce to show the serifs, and we had to use sans-serif font for the longest time, and most probably this is one of the many reasons we associated the sans-serif fonts with modernity and technology, and we rarely see, for example, a logo of a cool new startup, a cool digital startup created with a serif traditional font. So this is the really important piece of information that I want to convey you in today's podcast. I want to tell you that fonts are about how they've been used. The correct vibe of the font depends from what you want to look like, what kind of vibe and atmosphere you want to recall with your brand and with your copy, with your marketing pieces. You see from this that it's not about aesthetic. When it comes to direct response design, it's almost never about aesthetic. It's about specific strategic choices, because direct response design is basically your marketing becoming visual, and you finally can see it. And also the visual part is not about being good looking, making pretty shapes, but it's about delivering the same message that the copywriting and the positioning on the whole brand is communicating. Okay? We are not here to make pretty shapes. We are here to sell. We are here to make it very easy to contact us and buy our product or our service. I hope that this episode was useful to understand better the word of direct response design, the word of design itself, and the word of fonts themselves, feel free to reach me out at my email. You can find it at the contact section at filippinistudio.com with 2 P's. And feel free to reach me there. Ask me to go deeper. Ask me to make an episode about a topic about this direct response design that you're interested in. And also feel free to contact me just to see if I can help you bringing your marketing, sales letters, magalogs, and bookalogs to the next level. I will be very happy to do that for you. Okay? See you soon, and thanks for staying here with me.